Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, presented by Indy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Looks over the middle, second guesses, fires, throws. Does he make the catch in the end zone? Yes! Touchdown! Oladipo to win it.
Another one!
He got
Another
it!
one! Another one!
Huge hole. He's at the 30. He's going to go. 10, 5, touchdown. Jonathan Taylor.
Worked out by Burke. Bounces into Cody. Puts it up. Scores!
Now, from the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios, here's your host, Jim Coyle.
Welcome into the first day of this week. It's actually a Tuesday, post July 4th holiday. Hope everyone had a happy and safe holiday weekend. How are you? Tuesday. I got to get that in the brain. Tuesday. Whenever we have those short weeks, it'll screw me up all week, no matter what. But it usually gets me off on the days. I'm usually off every day. It'll start at the beginning of the week, then the end of the week, I'll be off on that wrong day. But I didn't do a whole lot. I hope you guys had fun, was relaxing for you. Not a lot going on. It was Friday or Sunday was football pick-em up day. Some picks, a lot of guys deciding where they want to go on Sunday. Indiana picked up James Mons, DB from Florida, another Florida commitment. So congratulations to Tom Allen and Indiana on that. We've got, Mike DeCourcy on today. We've got Chronic Hoosier on today. Let's see. Who else, John, the producer?
We got Jim Reamer on at 10:20, and then maybe Paul Gable. We haven't heard from him yet, but that's what we got so far.
Plenty to get to, and it'll be hopefully this is a calm week. Been waiting for that calmness. There's usually a calm part of the summer. We hadn't reached that yet, not at least as those of us that cover it. But I think that maybe we've gotten to that point for a minute, for a few weeks. But Big Ten Media Days, football media days, right around the corner, July 22nd, 23rd. So we're hopefully this is a few weeks of a dead period for people like me, because it's 47 weeks out of the year that it's not. But hopefully that's going to calm down. You got the football stuff out of the way. Not a lot going on. You'll start to have the AAU basketball finales, the gauntlet, the Peach Jam, all that stuff at the end of July. So we got a few weeks and to calm down. Cal Swerver, only the fourth Hoosier to be selected to the Major League All-Star team since 1995. There's a good piece of news. Then how about him? Dude has been just crushing the ball in everything he does. I wouldn't throw to him. I talked about that earlier. What all has he done? He's been setting some unbelievable, crazy records, especially on the heels of this deal with the pitchers and the sticky substance when they're kind of getting on them. Maybe that's why he wasn't as successful before. But man, he is on a tear. It's just, what are you, 10 home runs in 10 games, 5 in 2. But that doesn't surprise anyone who saw him play in college. But yeah, it's fun to see that. You think back to the days when Sosa and those guys, but of course that was drug fueled. But it's fun to see a guy go on a tear like this, especially one former IU guy. So, but yeah, it's fun to see that. We'll see how that continues as they try to pitch around him. Hello to everybody. Dwayne says, good morning. Good guy. Good afternoon. It's the RBL Sprint. Camera's still a little fuzzy. Well, I'm going to have to check that on the I'm about to, since my router got blown out and I switched the router, I'm about to put the new router back in there, it looks like. Let's see. We mentioned that. Kyle Schwarber headed to the All-Star game. We'll talk about that. How about that? 16 home runs in 1 month. Not bad. Not a bad month's work. Chris Lewis. John worked with Jim on seeing why his camera gets grippy. Well, that I can tell you exactly why. No, we had ever since we had that storm. I'm going to have to make a change here after today. So we'll get that taken care of. Now he has injured hamstring. Yeah, we're a little fuzzy. So we'll get that worked on. So it probably makes it better. So you have to see me as well. For those of you that have to look at me. But yeah, a great weekend, a relaxing weekend. I hope you had an enjoyable time. The NBA Finals has reached its point. It seems like it's lost a little luster for some reason. Well, the injuries hurt, but man, it was really rolling along. The NBA was so fun. The games were awesome. And then it just really seems like it took a hit. Trevor Lawrence signs a $36 million rookie contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars. Number one overall pick, Trevor Lawrence signed his 4-year rookie contract on Monday, clearing the way for him to attend the start of training camp in 3 weeks. Under the NFL's rookie training system, Lawrence's deal was projected to be worth $37 million, basically. That includes a $24 million signing bonus. So you get $24 million right off the bat. I'll take that. Man, not a bad deal. Lawrence's signing bonus will be paid within 15 days if he passes his physical. There is no offset language in the contract, meaning that he would still receive the full amount of the guaranteed money remaining of his contract, even if he were be released and signed with another team. He gets paid no matter what by them. And he gets whatever, if he were to be traded, he gets the new salary too. Lawrence will receive his bonus even if he is not active on. If he gets hurt, he still gets the bonus. So basically, he's set. He's set. Trevor Lawrence sounds a big fatty. I like to have that contract. Good morning, Brian. Or good afternoon, Brian. How are you doing? Let's see. Robo Sprint asking, did we see the news from Kennesaw and the golfer? Had to check in on Dustin. No, what happened there? Missed that.
Yeah, there was a shooter on a Kennesaw golf course, and I think he killed 3 people from what I was reading a second ago. Yeah, down where Dustin's at. Hopefully, good to know that Dustin is okay.
Well,
thankfully.
Hopefully he's not the shooter. But yeah, you don't ever hear of that. That's crazy. I mean, I've been pretty PO'd on the golf course, trust me. And there's plenty of others, but usually doesn't get that bad. But it's like anywhere else, man. I don't know what that situation was, but Minnesota's Marcus Carr, where does he go? Kentucky, Louisville, Texas, Kansas? I don't know, man. These teams are going to – Kentucky is a team that I can see stockpiling. They've got C.J. Frederick from Iowa. You got Kofi Coburn, who's nobody knows what's going to happen to Kofi Coburn. Is he I don't see him pulling out of the draft. Why would he? I think that he's you don't have to be draft ready, but I would think that these NBA teams would say, yeah, you're close enough to where we want you. Like a Romeo. Romeo was not ready to play, but that's not the point. I know everybody gets hung up on whether they think that they're ready to go from college and start in the NBA. That's not what the NBA is looking at or seeing or thinking about. They're thinking about, is this kid someone that we can develop to play? They don't care where they're playing now. They don't care who's developing them or what school they're at. They want to get them in their hands. And if they think that's a kid that'll play, they'll draft him. That's just how that works. I'd be shocked if Kofi Coburn is not ready for that. I mean, physically he's ready for that. He just looks ready. I mean, I don't know why he would not go in the draft. Depending upon who's drafting and whose needs are what. But let us know what you did over the weekend, what you're looking forward to this week. Not a lot going on. I'm going to try to get James Mons on, the new signee for Indiana football, as they landed another Florida recruit, a defensive back, James Mons. In May, the 3-star quarterback released the top 6 that included Miami, Wisconsin, Michigan State, Nebraska, Mississippi State, and Indiana. Okay, those are some big-time schools. They're all big-time schools. He took visits to those schools, and Indiana was the winner. That's a big win for Indiana, not because he's a 3-star, so that's not like you're getting a 5-star, but you're going up against Wisconsin, Michigan State, Nebraska, Michigan State, Miami. That says a lot. A ton. The Hoosiers beat out Big Ten schools and out-of-conference programs for Mons. Say he loved his visit to Bloomington. That stuff has never happened, and it continues to happen. That's the now you're getting the recruiting hits. And that will continue as the winning continues, but that has to continue, the winning and the player production. They need to start winning in bowl games, but expect that to happen. But Indiana has become a program, an actual football program where people will come, and it is. I don't see any reason for this to de-escalate, much less not just continue in a positive way. Certainly going to find out in a few months, without question. Indiana's getting the pressure now of being a Big Ten player, I guess you'd say it. They're a player in the game. You hear Michigan keeps still be talked about, but man, I don't know that they are. They're going to get talked about just because of it's Michigan, but I think it's in the Big Ten East. It's going to be Ohio State, Indiana, and Penn State. So I don't think the two Michigan schools are players this year, which is kind of funny. It's real funny. But Indiana has to work to keep it that way and stay a part of that. Of course, Iowa may be the leading team in the Big Ten West. I'm not sure if they're going to outdo Wisconsin, but Indiana is playing the tops of the entire Big Ten when you add the Big Ten East and Iowa onto their schedule. Hey, we got to take a break. We got plenty more coming up. Mike DeCourcy's on today. Chronic Hoosier's on today. Who else we got? Jim Reamer on today, and who knows, maybe more. We'll be back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans. I didn't have any energy, man. I got to have the energy. Leave somebody else to get my energy going.
This morning, this is the latest I've woken up for a show since we started doing this.
It's hard. These post-holidays are hard, man.
I know. Man, excuse me. My throat, too, is killing me.
I need somebody else to talk up to.
Well, you got DeCourcy coming on here, so that'll help you out. Another guy I couldn't think of was Zane Durant. He committed to Penn State over Indiana. The two guys Indiana missed out on are both 4 stars. Here's Mike.
Hello, Mike.
Hey, what's going on, Jim?
Just a post-holiday, doldrums. I'm tired. It's like, I didn't do anything either. Normally, you need that day to recover, and I do, but I didn't do anything to recover from. How was your weekend?
Oh, nice. Went back to Pittsburgh. Saw some family. So a lot of driving, but other than that, it was good.
Were you born in Pittsburgh?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Born, raised, the whole deal. Went to college there. Didn't really lived my whole life there until my 30s, and then had to leave when my paper went out of business. So I haven't been able to move back since.
That's one of the few cities I have not spent any time in Philadelphia or Pittsburgh, which is odd to me. Of all the places I've been, I'm like, gosh,
right.
How do you just sometimes it just hasn't worked out. And
right.
Well, you're a baseball
guy. You should go there sometime when the Reds play there. It's a
Three Rivers, ball. Man.
No, the PNC Park where the Pirates play is amazing. Just a beautiful place.
Is it still Three Rivers, or is it just a name change, or is it a completely different stadium?
No. Brand new ballpark. Well, not brand new now. It's 20 years old, but it's spectacular. It's one of the best in the league. I
missed the name, Three Rivers. That was one of the greatest names.
It was.
All right, guys, I'm bringing us back in.
Steaks and seafood. Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink.
Today's guest is brought to you by Reynolds Family Dentistry of Sellersburg. You need $1 million smile for those championship photos, and that's exactly what you'll get with Reynolds Family Dentistry.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back on this Tuesday. Joined now by the great Mike DeCourcy from Sporting News, senior editor there, as well as Big Ten, BTN, and Fox, which that's slowly getting closer and closer to coming back to work. I was just talking about this is supposed to be the dead time for us, and it's just now getting to the dead time. But I'm like, man, Big Ten media days are in less than 3 weeks. There's just no dead time this summer. So I think it's a post-COVID squeeze in, which I'm not complaining about having anything to do. I'm cool with. I don't care. But it's been a busy sports summer that has not had any breaks, it seems like.
Well, I think there's a couple things. First of all, this is usually a busy month because of July basketball recruiting. That's always a big deal. But this year with
I forgot we're in July already. I was used to be in June. I'm sorry, I forgot we were in July already. Like, boom.
Yeah, what the introduction of name, image, and likeness has certainly been a factor in the news cycle in the end of June, early July, which it's an entirely new thing for college athletics to be going through. So that's a factor. And then the open transfer window and the delay of the NBA draft as well. So you have players like E.J. Liddell from Ohio State announcing, I guess, over the 4th of July weekend that he's going to return to play another season for the Buckeyes. Well, ordinarily, that would have taken place in early June, first week of June, after the combine. There would be an NCAA basketball date to retain your eligibility that would take place first week of June, and then the draft would have already taken place as well. So all of that's getting crammed into July now because of the COVID delays. The NBA finals are now in July. They would be long since over. The Stanley Cup just got another game at last night. All this stuff would be over. We would be looking at not much more than summer basketball recruiting and the continuation of baseball and soccer season. There wouldn't be really much else going on.
Yeah, and glad to have it, actually, because last year at this time we were watching Korean baseball. If you recall that, I just don't recall. Korean baseball with sex dolls as the audience members, if I recall correctly. So it gave us some great humor. I mean, we would have never thought of the Korean Baseball League, and the sex doll thing, I would just always laugh at. It's just always going to be a funny thing to me that they put sex dolls out there to have audience members. Just some funny stuff, but the changes that have come because of COVID to sports, any long lasting besides our interactions, which are great. I hope that they get back to the way it used to be. But what are the biggest COVID changes in sports that comes to your mind?
Well, most of them are the things that I hope don't remain. And I totally, I'm one of those who, like, I understand why it's the in-person interaction between athlete and, or let's say between competitor and reporter hasn't rushed back. I totally get that. I do like that baseball has allowed in-person interaction between reporter and player, presuming that the reporter can prove that he or she is vaccinated. I like that. But I understand why there's a reluctance to go back to that. I know there are some, I'm not a fatalist. I know that they're going to try to keep it this way. I'm not one who believes that. I think that it's, if you could snap a finger and COVID would be disappeared from the world tomorrow, we'd go back to being the way we were tomorrow. But it's not happening that way. So it's going to be gradual, and I'm okay with that. I understand their reluctance. I mean, we talked yesterday on the U.S. Soccer post-game conference call, Zoom call, whatever, with Latko Andonovski, who's the coach of the U.S. women's national team. And they are going to Tokyo for the Olympics. And they have not played over the course of the last 5 games prior to the Olympics, a very stringent opposition. It's been pretty meager. And it's allowed them to work some things out. They were really sharp yesterday against Mexico, but they haven't faced a lot of competition. So there was a presumption among the media. Okay, well, obviously you're going to go to Tokyo and you're going to do scrimmages against some of the other better teams, right? That's what you would always do. Men's national team has done that before World Cups when they qualified. Women's national team has always done that in the tournaments they played, except this is COVID. So they're not playing any exhibition games prior to the Olympics. They're just going to play intra-squad matches. Now, intra-squad matches for the U.S. women's national team are pretty high level because they've got a lot of players that are good, but they won't play anybody else. And it's all because just trying to protect oneself and one's team and one's ability to remain in the competition and remain relevant without those sorts of interruptions. Because remember, as we saw at the College World Series, we don't know how many women's national team players are vaccinated. We presume probably most of them, if not all. They're a pretty smart group of athletes. I would imagine most of them have done it. But if it's not impossible for one to test positive if exposed to the virus while vaccinated, and there will be COVID testing at the Olympics. So they don't want to have any interactions that aren't required. So they've been pretty much bubbled. They've done very little in the way of in-person contact with fans or media. And that this is all a product of that. So I'm eager to see what the post-COVID world is like, Jim, because I'm eager for there to be a post-COVID world. We are not there yet. The more people that get vaccinated, the quicker we'll get there. But we're not there yet.
Yeah, and your piece last time we talked about the Colts, not all the guys getting vaccinated and the problem it's causing, I would think that while IU tried to institute a requirement that people have to be vaccinated, and some have when you come back, which I wouldn't have a problem with that either, but some people are not wanting to do that, want to be vaccinated. So it's like, don't play, don't get paid. Because if you're interacting with the entire team and there's billions of dollars in salaries that are laid out there and the entire play of the league. So if they don't want to play or get inoculated, then they don't play. To me, it would be that simple. I mean, I know can't be that simple, but I think that if they're going to want to keep leagues, whatever league it is, as clean as possible, how do you not do that?
Well, the NFL has they have not mandated it because that would be something they would have to negotiate with the Players Association. And they have, they have not gone in that direction. But what the NFL has done,
2 years.
Yeah. What the NFL has done is set up a series of rules and regulations and protocols that essentially say, if you don't do this, your life will be miserable. Whereas if you do this, your life will be normal. And when we say normal, we mean pretty much what it was in 2019 or 2018. And so I think that's a really smart move in the absence of the ability to establish an across-the-board mandate. What you say is you make it a lure and it more a carrot than a stick. And I think that's been really smart from the NFL standpoint. They don't want to be dealing with this any longer. They want their competition to go forward without interruption. Remember, a year ago when we had a football season that managed to be transacted within the space that they had set up. It began here, it ended here. That was the way it was supposed to be. But in the middle of that, you had the Pittsburgh Steelers have to wait a month and a half to play a game against Tennessee that was supposed to happen, I don't know, end of September, early October. Didn't happen until beginning of November, whenever it was. Around Thanksgiving, you had the Steelers also interrupted in regards to the Baltimore Ravens with a bunch of positive. They don't want that anymore. They want to be able to just go, okay, Sunday, 1:00, we're kicking it off, we're going forward. And so that's why they've gone in the direction that they have. And I know, because I follow the Steelers closely, they're a team that is very proud of the fact that they've had better than 90% vaccination rate across the organization, including the players, coaches, et cetera. So they're excited about that. And hopefully there will be more teams. There'll be 32 teams, 31 other teams that meet that standard.
What's Indy?
I don't know the answer to that.
Indianapolis.
I do not know what the Colts have.
They're not giving those out.
You're not obviously not required to do that at this point. And I think that the teams that have done well are boasting about it, rightfully so. I have not heard from the Colts on that. I'm not saying that they haven't. I have not seen a figure like that from the Colts.
And am I getting to looking at college athletics for this fall for football, for example? If Indiana is requiring students get vaccinated, what about fans?
Well, everybody has the capacity to do that. And it happened with the Knicks when they were in the NBA playoffs in the first round. They said, you want in? Come on in. Show me your card. Show me your ticket. Show me your card. You're in. And then they didn't have to block off seating sections. They didn't have to socially distance. They basically just had everybody in. And there have been others that have done that. They've done that some in the Euro soccer championships and various. It's that tournament was planned to be spread out across the continent, not just one particular country as a site. They had planned initially, before any of this stuff happened, to go from London all the way to Bucharest, Rome, Copenhagen, a variety of different cities. And so they had planned that. So various cities have had different protocols and rules, but in at least one or two of those venues, they have said, if you show vaccine and you show ticket, you're in. And that's been the case in some of those. Others have socially distanced, sold fewer tickets because vaccination isn't as prominent, as far along in those countries right now. I mean, the difference between the United States and a lot of the rest of the world is, if you want to be vaccinated in this country, it's almost hard not to be. If you want to,
they're wearing me out with my phone. I'm like, dude, I've been vaccinated for months. Yes. Your first shots, your second shots. I'm like, man, they are trying and trying. Yeah. And I'm like, I'll take another one.
If you want to be vaccinated here, you basically have to make an active decision not to be, to not get it. It's free. It's available everywhere. So you can, but in a lot of countries, that's not the case. So they have to be slower to return to full capacity, that sort of thing.
What does it say about us, though, that, what is it, 50% of the country has been vaccinated? Is that right?
Well, we have now 67% have had at least one shot, and I don't know
That's
what
pretty good.
That's not. I mean, it's funny because I over the weekend there had been from President Biden a declaration that he wanted 70% of Americans to have at least one shot by July 4th. They got to 67%, and of course, the news was that they didn't make it. I mean, that's
pretty close to me. That's pretty damn close to me.
Like that's like a football coach saying, we want to win all 16 of our games this fall. And then you go 14-2, and the headline is they didn't make it. I mean, that's just bad journalism. I'm sorry. Everybody that said that as their headline.
We wanted 200 yards rushing. We only got 175.
Yeah, they really dropped the ball on that. There have been some good signs, Jim. There 40%. We're up 40% in vaccinations over the past 2 weeks, over the previous 2 weeks. So at least we're making some progress. We're breaking, we're moving forward. Hopefully it will continue until we're near universal. I know there are very, 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 very rare incidences of people who cannot be because of certain medical conditions. But beyond that, not a lot of good reasons not to be.
I think the Indianapolis 500 will continue to be maybe the event that really spurred so much, because 135,000, only 19 cases coming out of that. I mean, man, there's your litmus test for sports, if there is one. I don't know that they could have any better one than that right there.
It's a positive. It was great, and it was a wonderful race, one of the best ever, and it was great. But remember, that was prior to the Delta variant starting to make some headway in the U.S., and so the timing was perfect for IMS, and good for them. But again, the more people that get vaccinated, the less that's a factor. Got to get everybody going on that train.
Yeah, we absolutely do. We got to take a quick break, so we'll go ahead and do that. And we'll be back with more. Mike DeCourcy joining us right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for...
Michael, what do you have that you're working on, sir?
Well, I have an article coming this morning about the U.S. Women's National Team's final preparation for the Olympics.
Which women's team?
The women's
gymnastics,
women's soccer team. They played yesterday against Mexico. It was their final. It was their final game prior to the Olympics, and as I said before, they won't even play any closed door exhibitions. That's it. They'll just practice from now on. I have that article coming. I'm working on a mock draft for late this week, early next week. So those are a couple of the things that'll keep me busy over the course of the next few days.
When did international women's soccer take off? Because I know many of the countries oppress women in many of the things, not all of them, but so many of them that it would, like Germany is not going to have does Germany even have a women's team?
Germany
I'm
has
sure
a
they do
very
now,
good
but
women's team. Germany has a very good women's team, has for many years. I believe they won the World Cup in 2002. The women's game, the first women's World Cup, which wasn't even called the World Cup at that point, was in '91. The soccer was introduced to the Olympics, I believe, in '96 here. They played the final in Athens, and then 1999 when the World Cup was here, and the women won. And you may remember Brandy Chastain hit the winning penalty kick and twirled her shirt over her head, and that was really the moment when it really took off here. And it's made a lot of progress over the course of the last decade. Germany was way ahead of most of the European countries, but there's been a lot of progress. And the European women's teams, France, England, Netherlands, Spain to a lesser extent. They're all getting much better. Italy should be better, but isn't. That's a place where it's really lagged behind. For as great as the men have been, the women's team has not been.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and bring us back in.
21 Honda Accord LX front-wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back on this post-July 4th weekend holiday on this Tuesday. Mike DeCourcy joining us now from the Sporting News, also Big Ten Network and Fox as well. And soccer is getting ready to have a big time with the Olympics are heading our way. The women's soccer program, I don't want to say ahead of, but having much more success than the men's. But that's for so many different reasons, as we were talking about in the break. The women's international soccer, I don't know, was probably a later developing thing with some of the countries, whereas the men's wasn't. Will the men ever catch up to international soccer? I mean, it's amazing. I think it amazes people that America cannot compete. And if there's any sport that America can't compete in, and it's not that they can't compete, but they're just not at that upper echelon. And it just blows people's minds, I think.
Well, I think one of the things that that has to be understood, first of all, the rest of the world basically had a 100-year head start on the United States. The United States didn't really start to embrace this sport as a thing until the 1990s. There was a professional league here in the States for I don't remember when the NASL started, late 60s maybe, and then it died in 1984. And it was sort of like it was a smaller entity. I know they drew huge crowds in New York, and people point to that as evidence of how huge it was, but it wasn't big. It was never on television, and television is sports currency. It was almost never on television around the country. They might put, I remember in maybe my late teens, they put the championship game on TV, but it wasn't on regularly. The World Cup wasn't on regularly, maybe just the championship game again, until ESPN started putting in, or actually I believe Turner put it on in 1990, and then ESPN took over from there. We are way behind the rest of the world in that sense. And then the other sense I think that's underappreciated and often fought against by particular elements of soccer conversation is that soccer is not the only sport to play here, basically. I mean, if you grow up in Argentina or Brazil or Uruguay or England, I mean, soccer is it. And it's like you are unusual if you play anything else. Here in
not only that, it takes no equipment. You can go out in any field with a ball.
Yes, true. And that's one of the reasons why it's huge, which also one of the reasons why basketball has gotten to a lot of the world. Again, you have to have a hoop, but you just need a ball, and that's it. And so there is a universality to that. It doesn't require a great economic investment just to play. Like ice hockey. I mean, you got to have skates, you got to have sticks. You got to have ice, and in most cases that's an indoor rink, and that's an expense. So I mean, those things are factors against everybody participating. But the key factor is the diversity of options here for a young athlete. There are so many more sports that he or she might play. Now, soccer has become for young women, for girls. Soccer's become maybe the sport or one of the two sports, but for young men, for boys, there's still baseball, football, basketball, lacrosse is a big thing now. I mean, all these things divert attention away for young athletes. And so The competition to get that gifted athlete onto your field to play is more severe. And there's a lot of people in the United States who will argue, like, if LeBron James had played soccer, he'd be the greatest player of all time. Look at his size. We don't know that. I mean, we don't know whether he would have been a great player. I will maintain that Allen Iverson's the greatest athlete I've ever seen, and that if he'd played soccer, he'd have been good at that. But my point is,
he was a hell of a football player.
Yeah, exactly. Our Lionel Messi or our Cristiano Ronaldo might be a shortstop on some Division II college team. You don't know. You don't know who that player is, but you know that it's possible or likely that some percentage of those potential
Wayne Gretzky.
Yeah. I mean, they are diverted into other sports and may never find out that they would have been great soccer players.
Yeah, it's a sport that I think I grew up. I was graduated high school in the 80s. So my vision of soccer was limited because it wasn't here a lot yet. My high school didn't have it. I thought of it as a sissy sport because of what I saw was when it was on TV, it was the World Cup. And all you saw is flopping. And it drove me insane. And I'm like, that's soccer to me, because that is what we would see. The World Cup would be on, and you see nothing but these unbelievable flopping. I'm like going, who has time for that? And so that was my vision of soccer. And I think that it formed too many average sports fans' visions of that being the sport. And I think that was a negative connotation for it. And you also have to know the rules. I didn't know the rules. You need to know the rules to appreciate it. I've told this story before. I took my daughter to see a game that was in Louisville, level below the top layer. But once you see it for yourself, it changes everything. If you're a real sports fan, I was mesmerized. I was like, she didn't care, couldn't care less. And I'm like, look at the speed. I mean, the precision, everything is done for a reason. I was like, wow, how did he see that pass? It's if you really appreciate it, and I try to appreciate all sports, man, at the top level, it's artwork and it's very artistic. And it's like, wow, I could not play that sport. That's another reason I don't want anything to do with something that requires me to run 6 miles in a contest. I'm out. If I wanted to do that, I'd run cross country. I didn't do that. I was a sprinter. I ran, hurdles, 100-meter hurdles. I played football, shorts, man. But yeah, you have to be in phenomenal physical shape. It is the quick everything. It is a sport that requires to be in immense shape. You have to be a top talent, and it is a tremendous sport if you learn to appreciate the rules. And other than World Cup play, it's great to watch. Once I started getting my daughter, or she started playing, I started watching. I watched way more than she did because I can enjoy a soccer match now. If it's a good one, I love to go watch IU. I can enjoy a soccer game now, where before that, no chance.
Yeah, well, if you do, I mean, obviously the women coming up in the Olympics will be great. They start July 21st against Sweden, and because the competition is being held in Japan, much different time zone, so you're going to have to get up early. I can't remember. I think it's around 5 a.m. ish Eastern time that you'll have to get up to watch the Sweden game, somewhere in that ballpark.
That's what DVR is for, baby. That's what DVR is for.
You watch the game and you get it out of the way to start your day. You're ready to go. And then, of course, next couple of days you have Copa America in South America with Lionel Messi, et cetera. And then you have the Euros, the semifinals. Today, Italy against Spain, and tomorrow, Denmark against England. And, you talked about flopping. You may have seen over the weekend. It's still a problem. There was a player from Italy who went down trying to draw a penalty in the box, and he went down, and they didn't call a penalty. And then a second later, because some of the Belgian players were were mad at the guy for faking the penalty, they gave up a goal. So, and then the guy, as soon as the goal went in the back of the net, the guy who was faking got up and celebrated the goal. So it's still a problem, and it should be policed better than it is at the international level. Flopping is much better policed in particular leagues. I think that the MLS does a really nice job with that. Premier League does, but you got to watch. If somebody fakes a penalty and then gets up and celebrates a goal, I'm sorry, that's got to be a yellow card.
Yeah, I agree, man. I agree 1,000%. Antoine Randall, Joey Green mentions would have been a great. But it's funny you say that about Allen Iverson, and which is what this reminds me of. Mark Deal, who is a former assistant coach, football coach at IU, now at the foundation, but he was recruiting Antoine Randall, but was also recruiting Allen Iverson. Had seen him play and said he was one of the greatest football players he ever saw. Dual threat, kind of like Allen. He said he was just phenomenal. He said he would have been incredible quarterback. So that goes to what you say.
Well,
there are
I
some
will tell
people,
you,
they're just great.
If Allen had been a football player, he would have been a defensive back. He would have been a taller Deion Sanders.
Yeah,
that's what he would. He would have been that. He was too thin to be like the hard hitting guy, Rod Woodson type at the corner. But he would have been a guy you never threw the ball toward. I'm telling you, he's the greatest athlete I've ever seen. And although he didn't play soccer, if it had been introduced to him when he was 8 or 9 years old, I know that he would have found a way to be great at it. The best athlete I've ever seen. Just fast, great stamina, great toughness. He had everything.
I don't doubt that at all. And the minute you said that, I'm like, you know what? I guarantee that's got to be true, just because I'm putting together what Mark said. And it's people want to think of the LeBrons. Well, LeBron would not have been a good soccer player because there's no way that this big 6'8" lumbering dude is going to keep up with these guys. Not from what I see him getting up and down the floor or up and down the pitch and the cuts. And I'm like, that's just too hard. And that field, a little bit bigger than a basketball court. That's a lot more. That's a lot more green you got to cover, man. Tony said that he thinks some of the lagging interest in the U.S. has to do with an ingrained attitude that scoring means excitement, not used to seeing a 1-0 match or a game decided by penalty kicks as fun. Some of that maybe, but I'm
right. He's absolutely right. That's a factor. In fact, in the 90s, I wrote a column that said that if the U.S. wanted to make soccer more interesting to the casual fan, they should make goals worth 12 points. Because, I mean, think about it. A football game, like 21-14 is only 3-2 in soccer. I mean, that's the reality. But we pretend like there's all these points. It's not that many points. You just crossed the goal line 3 times. So, I think he's right about that there's this perception that there's not that much action in it, but there is. Now, of course, there are really dull 1-0 or 0-0 games as well, just as there are really dull 21-14 football games. And there's nothing universal, but there can be an absolutely thrilling 1-0 soccer game depending on how it plays out.
A 1-0 soccer game can be a lot more exciting than a 0-0 football game all day long. Chris asks, NCAA going to a split soccer season? I know there are a lot of, after COVID, I think really pushed this. The coaches are behind this. I know they definitely want this. I think fans, I want it. I would like to see it. Who wants to see the championship played outside in late November in Philadelphia, where it was a couple years ago?
Yeah, Chris, it's a great question. It was the University of Maryland's coach who put together an entire proposal on this. And they basically, at a point, I think it was in 2019, said, we'll get back to you on that. And it was a disappointment, but it wasn't a defeat. And then COVID happened, and it really threw everything off totally in terms of procedure and making changes and that sort of thing. But I think that the experience of going through that and having the spring championships that Marshall won over IU in the men's in particular, I believe it was I think Florida State won the women's. Having that in the spring in North Carolina was a fabulous example, sort of a great. Here's what it would be like if we do this. And the fact that Pitt did really well by playing an effective split season. Remember, some of the leagues just played a compressed spring season, but the ACC played in the fall, and then they came back for the national championships. Those teams that qualified, Clemson, Pitt, I believe Wake, they came back and played in the spring championship. So they showed that you can do it that way, play in the fall championship in the spring. So I think that season, although it wasn't ideal from any standpoint that we discussed earlier relative to COVID, it was a good example of here's what we can have if we do this. And I think it's time now for the NCAA to say yes to this. If they're going to continue to sponsor soccer as a sport, and I don't think it's going away, then they really should go to that split season and have it be real soccer instead of this truncated, get it in, get it out, hardly any games, not enough practice. Have a full season. It doesn't have to be 40 games or whatever, but have a full natural season that goes over the course of the great weather fall months and the great weather spring months.
Yeah, because I put soccer on par with basketball. I mean, you played entire. I don't know how many. I'd have to go back and look how many games they played. It's not as many, but you still play a college or a conference tournament at the end of that prior to the national tournament, which that can be an additional 6 weeks alone just in those endeavors. That's half of a football season right there. So just the playoff, they need the spring, just half of the spring for the playoffs, almost, if you go far enough, I think. And soccer, their money's definitely there. I wouldn't mind having. I'd love to have been the agent for Messi there on that $674 million contract. Those numbers are mind-boggling.
Yeah, I think I believe Messi's agent is his dad, so the commission stays in the family. I believe I'm right about that.
This is something that I've wondered. The offsides rule in soccer. If they did eliminate this, there would be so much more scoring. And I'm always, when I see it, I'm like, yeah, to me, that's a job of defender, man. Don't let him get behind you. It's like football. It's like, hey, I was a DB. If I got burned, let me tell you, there wasn't a referee saying, oh, he was offside, he's got to go back. It was like tough crap. And I've just never understood. I'm like going, unless they're, snowbirding back in a corner or something, but it's usually not. It's usually such a cluster just right there. And I'm like, man, it would promote a lot more scoring. I think they could prevent the snowbirding thing easily, but
Wow.
You can't have a defender the box or something. They're a distance, but it has to be the distance of the box or something. Put it another way.
You could snowbird above the box. Then that's why the rule exists, because it could, you would just have a
put a defender on it.
Well, yeah, but then it's not the same sport. I mean, I don't have a problem with the offside rule. I think it's what creates the beauty in the game in a lot of ways. And if you you can go to Taylor Twellman's Twitter account today, and he shows a goal that the United States put together yesterday against Mexico. That's just absolute art. And it begins in the defensive half and works all the way up. I think 6 or 7 players, U.S. players, touched the ball. Now, ironically, it was called, the goal was nullified by a bad offside call. But the rule itself, the nature of the rule promotes the way that goal was constructed. It's really part of what makes the game beautiful. I mean, if you had a hockey offside rule where you had a defined line, I don't think it would be as attractive. It might be easier to call, but I don't think that would be as attractive a game. It's a beautiful game. I mean, it's one of the reasons it's the most popular sport.
I mean, when I talked to Todd Yeagley, I remember a long time ago, he was talking about it being the sport that you have to do everything completely with your feet and the things that they're able to do. And it is, if you, like you're talking about, if there was a particular score and if you go back and watch that thing in totality, watch the passes, the leading, the vision, it can be, I'm like, man, like I said, how do they see that? Where was that? It's great. It really is. That's why I can have an appreciation for it. But I wouldn't mind a little snowbirding either, just to see some score. To see the score, I'm like, hey, man, you should have been watching. But that's the job of the goalie. But that would be fun. But what do you have coming up next, Mike?
Well, I have a story today about the fact that the women's national team played 5 games since June 10th, I believe, all against lower ranked opposition. And it helped them because the attack was really beautiful against Mexico yesterday. But it didn't challenge their defense much. The keeper only faced like 5 combined shots in all those games. And some of them were basically just picking up balls that were rolling toward her. Now, Alyssa Nahr is a terrific goalkeeper. We saw that in the World Cup in 2019. And the back 4 for the U.S. is outstanding. But they haven't faced much challenge. So I asked 2 players and the head coach yesterday, how have they been able to keep sharp? Given that, and they had some very interesting answers to that. That will be posted within the next hour or so, and then by the end of the week, probably I'll have my NBA mock draft posted. Interesting to look at what some of the teams might do. One of the things that bothers me about mock drafts is the fact that a lot of the picks will be traded, so you never know exactly how to go with that. And some people just invent trades. I'm not going to do that. Yeah, it does. But I'm not going to make up pretend trades. It's not. I mean, unless I had some inside information that a trade was going to happen, I'm not going to do that. So I'll do my best with the mock and see how that goes, and we'll get that up as well by the end of the week.
Well, the big number 13 is of importance for Pacers fans, of course. How will that change before it gets to number 13 is the question. Where the trades in front of that, how will that impact on who they end up with?
They got to do a better job, Jim, than they have with their first round picks. I mean, I'm not saying everybody is going to get a Devin Booker.
This one's important, though.
Yeah, I mean, you're not, if you're picking in the teens, you're not always going to get, not very many are going to get a Devin Booker. Not very many are going to get a Spida Mitchell. I mean, it doesn't happen that often, but it does happen. So you can't throw away your pick on a guy like TJ Leaf. I mean, and they did that. And there was no excuse for that. TJ Leaf had a really nice freshman season for UCLA, but he wasn't physically developed. He didn't have the pace, the speed, the quickness to be a high-level NBA player. There's somebody out there better than that, I guarantee you. So Pacers have to do a better job this time than they did on that occasion, and it's not the only one where they picked in the teens and just kind of tossed away the pick.
Make sure you give him a follow at TSN Mike on Twitter and with the Sporting News. Mike DeCourcy, thank you so much, man. We appreciate you as always.
Thanks, Jim. Always a pleasure.
We will talk to him next week, and we'll be back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fan. What up, Chronic?
What's going on, Jim?
Living the dream, my brother, like you. Just living the dream.
I hear that.
It was a calm weekend, relatively calm. Just thinking of what's coming next, man.
Shit, it's the doldrums of summer. It's the best worst time of the sports year.
It is the absolute best for me for the next 3 weeks. I'm gonna love it because it's the last. Once the media days gets here, the 22nd, it's over.
Yeah, it's a sprint from that point on.
Well, hell, you've got IU basketball in the Bahamas 2 weeks after that.
And then we're basically full on camp from that point on. Yeah, it just gets nuts after that. It's that slog right now, though, late June, July, where there's just nothing happening. Usually the only news that comes out is bad news, with the exception of you got guys pulling their names out of the draft, which, at this point is kind of a foregone conclusion. It's just housekeeping, but still.
What you been up to?
Not a whole lot, man. Just working like a slave. Jack shit. Absolute jack shit. So, my son cut the hell out of his arm, I guess Thursday, Friday. So our boating for the weekend had to go to the wayside with his some fresh stitches in his arm that he had to keep dry for 3 days. So we just laid low, man. Just did some cooking, did some chilling.
Where do you normally boat?
Out of Four Winds.
Oh, I was there.
Yeah, we were supposed to have been. I've got some family that's got a boat down there. I got a houseboat and a ski boat, and we have still failed to pull the trigger on buying one, but we just rent one a couple times a month.
I would say that would be the smartest move.
Honestly, I love it. I mean, it sucks when you don't have the impromptu availability on weekends, but it sure is nice not to have to mess with it when you're done with it.
Yeah, I was just down there.
And seafood. Som's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Som's Clubhouse. Som's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink.
This segment is brought to you by Bubba's 33 in Clarksville. Pizza, burgers, beer.
Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Joined now by Chronic Hoosier. How are you, sir?
Glad to be back, Jim. How you doing?
Cannot complain. Fresh off a post-July 4th lazy holiday. Didn't do a lot. And I liked it. I'm not going to lie. I'd take one more of those just for the heck of having it because they've been few and far between, but just happy to see people out and about, restaurants, stuff like that. Just getting out and enjoying. I'm still seeing a lot of masks, which is fine. Hey, if people want to wear a mask or maybe they're not inoculated, I don't know, but still seeing a lot of masks out.
Yeah, I was just working with a client yesterday, as a matter of fact, who she and her whole family were all masked up. And as a healthcare worker who's been vaccinated since the early onset, or availability, I should say, of the vaccine, was indicating, she's had a lot of coworkers who continue to be in contact with it, and despite the vaccinations, continue to test positive. So, abundance of caution. Totally respect it. Appreciate it. Like yourself, I'm just glad that we're back out and about, and things are humming along again. But 4th is always bittersweet, man. I got a July birthday myself, and all the years in Bloomington and enjoying B-Town summer to the fullest. 4th is such a big hurrah. A little more conducive to the outdoor activities than, say, Memorial Day weekend. Everything's just a little bit warmer. The lake's a little more temperate. But also recognizing, man, it's all downhill from here for as far as summertime's concerned. As we were talking during the break, we're just a couple weeks away from media day, and the next thing you know, it's full on go time for the fall semester again. So really trying to drink up every last drop of the summer while we still got it in front of us here.
The Bahamas, I mentioned that the Hoosier basketball squad down there, the 10th through the 13th of August. The Hoosier.com will definitely be down there covering that. But that's an expensive ride. I don't know how many. That's going to be a high end ride for the fans. Any fans that go, it's not a cheap deal there.
No, it's not. And this year, for the first time, I believe that we've gone down there, because when they've previously done Atlantis, tickets were not conditioned on where you were staying previously, which is a change up this time around. You've got to stay at the Marquee Hotel in order to have access to the event. And, it's certainly going to be a pricey trip for those that are able and choose to go. Unfortunately, I am willing, but I am not able due to work constraints. So I'm going to have to rely on those that are down there, since we're not going to have any broadcasts to relay what's happening. But end of the day, as we discussed before, I still absolutely I support the trip 1,000%. I think it's a great opportunity to get the guys away from town, put some strange jerseys in front of them, and just basically do some risk-free experimentation, just trying to get an idea how the systems are, how far along they are as far as what the new staff's trying to implement, trying to get a handle around the chemistry of the team, what rotations work best, and just let the guys go out and let loose a little bit. Summertime, as we've discussed, there's a whole lot going on, and now often it's covert, it's all under wraps, except for the random workout videos you see, and the photos and whatnot. But there's a lot happening, and this is the hard work. This is the gritty work. This is where these guys are being, physically and mentally pushed, well beyond what most of them are familiar with to this point. And they're doing it all by themselves with the strength staff, doing workouts with the coaching staff, but there's no eyes on them. So it's a long, unglorious slog to get to the start of the season. So giving them something on the calendar to, break up the monotony of the workouts, to go, get a little beach time in, do some international travel, go see some sights, and go get some run against some unfamiliar competition. I think it's just a win-win-win all the way around for the program, and hopefully it yields some fruits down the road once the exhibition season kicks in.
Yeah, I wonder if the no TV is just because it's I don't know, a pain, or if because they want to keep that under wraps until they know exactly what they have. But because August 10th through 13th, that's not that far away. What looking at 5 weeks. So yeah, they don't know what they're going to have 5 weeks from now. I don't know that I'd want that on TV. Who knows how that can go? So it's unusual that a game like that is not going to be broadcast. But it's unusual too to see. It's not just a new regime coming in. It's like a new corporation coming in to take over IU basketball. It's more because there's so many big names.
Yeah, it's a very complex organization, no doubt. I think the broadcast, if memory serves, is kind of similar to what we saw when they took the Canadian tour a few years back, with Coach Green, I believe it was. I think they played 3 or 4 games, only one of which had a stream. And I think that more than anything just came down to the logistics of putting together a broadcast. Both the equipment, the connectivity, the talent, the transmission, the hosting, and everything that it as you're well aware, that goes into putting on a broadcast. I don't think there's any prohibitions that I'm aware of. If anybody had the capability to stream when they were down there, I just think they decided that it would be easiest on relatively short notice if they just did without that component, for purposes of putting the trip together. But I wouldn't be surprised if you do see some streams pop up from folks in attendance, either media or otherwise. Oftentimes though, it's something as simple as, can you get a cell signal? Is it strong enough? Is it stable enough that you can actually stream the data? So we'll see if that pops up. But more to your point, I think this is one where, for purposes of what they're trying to achieve, what the program's trying to achieve from it, obviously I think they're cognizant of the need to satisfy fans, the need to bring them back into the loop. I think that's going to be a constant refrain in getting Hoosier Nation back together and back behind the team again. And I expect you'll probably see that reflected in the production of Hoosier hysteria and everything from that point forward. But I think for the immediate purposes, just giving these guys some run, giving these guys a chance to get out is probably all they're really concerned with. And they'll deal with the fan side, the PR side of it, once it's a little more controllable, once it's a little more familiar, once they're better resourced to deliver that, I think is going to be part of it as well. So anxious to see what that looks like, but is still really wishing I had a chance to go to the Bahamas and watch some IU basketball.
You and me both. But yeah, that'll be something to see. Indiana getting out and being a part of those. That's another thing, is not having Indiana a part of these national type broadcasts, not being a part of those Kentucky and UCLA and all those type games that you have every year. Indiana used to be a part of that, and a lot of that was the Crossroads Classic has affected that. But they've been limited on what they can do and what they participated in. And I think that I think under Mike Woodson that's going to change because he is already making Indiana again a national brand as a, not that they weren't always a national brand, but I think you know what I'm saying, recruiting wise, expanding it a little bit more. And I think more people are seeing this as a national brand again, that were fans under the Bob Knight. Well, it's been 30 years underneath that. So there's a generation of kids that have grown up that haven't seen that. And I think that you're going to start seeing that again.
Yeah, one thing that's always been fascinating with Indiana and broadcasts, it's certainly accelerated as the campuses have expanded, and they've really accelerated the rate at which they're graduating alums. Right now, I believe Indiana's second in the country, second or third right now in terms of the largest living alumni base. It's always been a tremendous brand. It's always had a really extraordinary reach. I mean, it's not uncommon year in, year out, no matter where Indiana is competitively. The November, the December non-conference games always rank among the highest watched across all platforms almost every year, even when the team's not been very good. And now I think where Indiana's really fallen is they haven't been particularly good on par over the last 2 decades, and as a result, you've seen the program miss out as more and more of these events get created for marquee matchups on the big stage. Playing in whether it's Madison Square Garden or on daggone aircraft carriers or whatever it may be. In order to qualify for the Champions Classic, you got to win some championships. You've got to at least be in contention for it. And Indiana's fallen short there, and they've kind of gone by the wayside. For years, the non-conference schedule was pretty predictable. It was always going to be highlighted by the IU Kentucky matchup. You'd throw another couple of big names in, and just a smattering of lower level opponents. And once Kentucky, that cog came out of the wheel, Indiana really struggled to find a balance, to find platforms where they could expose the brand, where they could get those marquee games. And the Crossroads Classic, while it was great on paper to bring the state's best teams together in the capital, where everybody got to join together in a rotating format. It looked great, but I think it's kind of soured in a lot of people's mouths as that's proven to be lesser competition than what they otherwise would face. It's just not. It's lost its luster, and I think
it does not. It does not.
It's even more so by comparison. It doesn't, and even by comparison, now it just gives fans something to bitch about. Here we are stuck playing Butler and Notre Dame again. Meanwhile, these teams are playing in Madison Square Garden, or again, on the deck of a freaking aircraft carrier.
National TV, exactly.
Yeah. So, I would not be the least bit surprised if this is going to be the last edition of the Crossroad Classic. I believe Zach Osterman was just writing today, as a matter of fact, in the Star, that Indiana's still trying to figure out what the non-conference is going to look like, kind of foretelling that perhaps it's not going to be the most challenging, but nevertheless, probably going to be a short-term thing for Indiana, as Woodson's really trying to teach these guys how to walk before they run, and then kind of building it up accordingly thereafter.
The UK game is a must. It needs to return. That is just a game that has to return, and I'm sick of it. This has got to be John Calipari, because there's no one else that doesn't want this game. And somebody needs to tell Calipari just to shove it and make this game happen. While he's the coach, if they have to do it, at the off-campus places, fine. And then when he's no longer the coach, if they want to change it back, fine. But I don't know. The IU UK game, first of all, do you want to see it on campus, or do you want to see that in a bigger venue for more people?
Man, I've seen them on campus, both in Bloomington and in Lexington. I've seen them in the neutral venues. Personally, I'd just like to see them again, no matter where they choose to play. But despite all my personal feelings about it, my rumblings, my complaints, all the UK fans I talk to, they basically view the game. While they love the rivalry, they love the tradition, they love the history between the two programs. For Kentucky, playing IU's a lot like IU's feeling towards the Crossroad Classic. There's not a whole lot for them to gain from it.
That's because Indiana is not. To me, it's because Indiana has not been competitive with Kentucky for a while. But I think Indiana needs to regain that recruiting foothold and say, hey, y'all stay the hell out of here.
Well, we say that, but Indiana's won 2 of the last 3 matchups against them. The problem being is, the Watt shot game just left a terrible taste in Kentucky's mouth, particularly Calipari, where it's a high risk, low reward type setup for him where, on your worst day, you just created an SB winning moment. On your best day, maybe you get a top 50 win at the end of the season. Maybe. Otherwise, there's not a whole lot other than perhaps giving your guys some exposure to a extraordinarily hostile environment. But it just doesn't deliver for them like it delivers for Indiana, to be quite frank. And I see both sides of it. I still wish it would come back. I mean, I think regionally, geographically, that's the one thing in the modern era of college sports is you've seen a lot of those rivalries fall to the wayside due to conference realignment, due to network obligations and everything else. But for 2 states that pride themselves on being the most hoops crazed in the world, I think it's just really tragic that they can't figure out a way to make it work. And if you've got to give a little bit and you've got to agree that, you'll let Calipari come and roll his squad out in Banker's Life or in Lucas Oil or wherever they choose. Yes, you're going to give him a lot of exposure in your backyard, but at least you got the game back on. So I'm sure Woodson's probably pursuing it right now. I know it's something that every staff heretofore has pursued ever since the series was called off. I'm just not going to hold my breath that Calipari changes his tune because at this point, you get the strong sense that his feelings are pretty set on it, and they're likely not going to change, absent something, some exceptional circumstances.
Well, I agree with that, but that's just something I'd like to see as we go forward. But plenty of other things. More importantly, just Indiana winning, getting back to being a team that people will count on. And actually, I'm not into predictions right now because it's way too early, and we're past break time, aren't we? But man, the Big Ten is changing. You don't know what's going to happen with Kofi Cockburn. Illinois is, I don't know that they're going to be much. Iowa, other than Michigan and Purdue, who knows what it's going to be like. But I think it's going to be an exciting basketball year regardless. A lot more exciting for Indiana fans than the last 4 have been for certain.
No, I think it's a fascinating time in Big Ten right now, to be totally honest with you. I think there's a lot of stuff in play right now as far as the hierarchy of the league. You have a very ascendant Michigan. Purdue has kind of been one of those baseline programs that, in decades past, you kind of look to Wisconsin, knowing year in, year out, they're going to be competitive. Painter certainly seems to have established the Boilermakers in that echelon right now. But then when you throw in Tom Izzo, who's probably reaching the twilight of his career, I would imagine, as you look at the Giants, Krzyzewski, Roy Williams, all deciding to step down. My guess is Boeheim's not too far behind him. I would imagine Izzo is not long for this league as well. Indiana is primed to at least there's an opportunity for Indiana to make a move back into the league's top tier. And I think as the staff continues to develop the program as they continue to recruit for next year's class and those beyond. I just think it's a tremendous opportunity for Indiana basically to reestablish themselves in the modern era of the Big Ten, if you will, as far as its competitive balance and where it stands to be here for the next decade plus. I just think it's on the table right now with Wisconsin going through some struggles since Bo Ryan left. Don't get me wrong; they're still a very good team. They continue to recruit and to play at a pretty high level. But I just think it's a great opportunity for Indiana to basically improve their stars, if you will, and rightfully put themselves back in the top of the league. Now, at the end of the day, that all sounds well and good on paper in theory. It's got to happen on the floor, though. You've got to find a way to put yourself in the top 3 of the league when the season's over. You've got to find a way to keep yourself competitive against any opponent in any environment, because that's one thing we've really seen Indiana struggle with over the years. Is even the best teams they've fielded have struggled at times, whether it was in East Lansing or in West Lafayette, where you just really see a gulf between where they are and where the league's best is at that moment. So it's a results driven game, man, and you've got to find a way to get the results that justify at the end of the day the resources that the university, that the athletic department's put into the program here.
Looking forward to it, brother. Looking forward to doing this again next week as well. I hope you had a great 4th of July and a great rest of your week.
Looking forward to doing it again next week, man. We'll catch you then.
Have a good one. Chronic Hoosier joining us here on Indiana Sports Beat. We're back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Whether you're looking for...
What up, Jim Reamer?
How are you?
I'm all right, brother. How are you doing?
I'm all right. I don't know how informative I'm going to be today.
Oh, there's nothing to be informed on, really.
I know. Yeah, there's absolutely nothing. There was no good events. Weekend was off basically, and none of the midweek stuff takes place in July because everybody's.
Kyle Schwarber going to the IL.
Is he? I don't follow baseball as much as I used to.
Well, he's just cranking out fucking home runs like donuts.
Yeah, he's been. I know he's having a good year statistically. So
he's been setting him Major League Baseball records, home run records. Kyle Schwarber delivered a mammoth month June for fantasy managers, slugging 16 home runs in 27 games. Now he'll spend the foreseeable future on the IL after suffering what appears to be a significant hamstring strain. How does a guy who hits home runs hurt his hamstring?
He just
must have twisted. Yeah, must have twisted too fast, tipping his hat.
Did
they got him in the outfield.
I was going to say, did the NL stick with the DH? They went back to the.
Yeah, he's in the outfield.
That's how bad I am at baseball these days.
Oh, I hear you. It's. I remember when I was a kid, I knew everybody on every team.
Yeah.
What's new with you, man?
Me? One day we're heading to Atlanta tomorrow for a big event.
What's going on there? Not the Peach Jam.
No. That's next week, a 2-week deal, and then which is not being well received.
The Peach Jam.
Yeah, teams. A lot of coaches complaining about it.
Why? What about? Well, we'll talk about it, but
yeah, it's 2 weeks for life. It's people work, people have families, and
what was it? What was it before? Just a weekend, right?
Just 4 or 5 days, yeah.
Well, why have they expanded it?
Here, I'm going to bring us back in. Y'all can talk about this when we get going.
Wheel drive lease for just $270 a month. Andy Moore Honda Bloomington, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer.
Come see us at the all-new Andy Moore Honda, now in Bloomington.
This segment is brought to you by Remax Advanced Realty, Indy Home Pros team by Cheryl Sizemore. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Happy Tuesday, everyone. Make sure I get that out. I'm going to practice saying the day every day this week. Jim Reamer joins us. Those short weeks, man, they screw me up. So I got to start saying the day. It's Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. Happy Tuesday, Jim Reamer. How are you?
Doing well. For me, the weekend's today. I'm down in Atlanta starting tomorrow. So
yeah, don't give me anything else to screw me up.
cramming as much as I can get in to this week today before it's just basketball the rest of the week. So, but this is coaching.
And what's going on?
Not so much.
What's going on in Atlanta?
We're playing an event called the Elite 32. It's probably it's coupled with Under Armour, what they're doing down there on the northwest side of Atlanta. There's going to be a lot of Nike teams there that are in between, that are waiting for Peach Jam to start next week. There'll be some Adidas teams down there, which I'm not sure why they're not in Birmingham, whether they didn't qualify for whatever's down in Birmingham this weekend or what. But it's a loaded field, which we're looking forward to, and it's going to be good for those kids that didn't get a chance to get recruited last year because of COVID. This is their first real shot at getting some pretty deep exposure, and they're pretty excited. So we started practice back up last night after a month away from each other. I had a month off. They had a month with their school teams, and they looked good. It was fun. We're looking forward to this week.
Talked about the summer schedule coming up. Peach Jam, one of those. You got the gauntlet, all of that stuff. The Peach Jam, some complaints we talked about in the. Normally it's a 4 or 5 day deal. Happens, right. Boom. Some changes they made this year.
Yeah, basically it's the 13th through the 20, whatever that following Sunday is, real quick, like the 25th or 26th. It's kind of a 2-week deal, and a lot of I'm going to say 4 coaches that I talk to on a regular basis, 3 of whom have been longtime Nike EYBL guys, don't like the format this year. And it's in large part because it's just, look, all of us coaches that do this, we make sacrifices. We make sacrifices with family, with friends, with finances. Even the teams that are sponsored, pretty heavily make sacrifices because these guys have regular jobs and whether they're using vacation days or they're using, they're soaking up days they don't get paid. It's still a commitment level, and it's still something that I think Nike this year, for whatever reason, is kind of taken for granted. And there's just been some complaints, and in the past we've had recruiting periods that were that long. There used to be a time where July was just open from July 6th until the 30th or whatever that last Sunday of the month would be. But at that point, you're making personal choices, and you are, you're still finding days to get kids rest. You're still finding days to be, with family, to live a normal life, and even as it gravitated to smaller recruiting windows, look, we all have choices to make. And in this case, Nike's kind of imposing some stuff on their programs. And there's just some coaches that don't seem to like it. So I don't know if it's across the board or if it just happens to be 4 guys that I talk to quite a bit, but none of the 4 are real pleased with how the schedule played out.
Yeah, it just seems like there's a lot of COVID has just forced some schedule issues, and some of them we're going to have to deal with. Sometimes I think people have taken advantage of that. Yeah.
And look, Nike may be of the mindset that says, look, we didn't know what we were going to be able to do this year. I know I was of that mindset with what I do, the program that I normally run. We had fewer teams because we weren't sure about how much access we would have to gym space. Was talking to a college coach today, and he asked why we didn't have as many teams as we did in the past. And I mean, I didn't find out I was going to be able to get the facilities we normally get until the week of sectionals. So that's early March. There was no way I could put myself or anybody in a position of having teams and not having locations to practice, locations to work out. So in Nike's case, where they could throw some money around, they probably don't have that same restriction, but they're probably also looking at it from a cost perspective. We know if we can get these teams down here, they're only going to have to pay one set of airfare. They can cut back on travel expenses for them, for their part. They'll still be paying for hotel expenses as far as lodging expenses or whatever their agreements are with each program. But from an airfare perspective, they probably could pull back a little bit of their sponsorship money because it's just going to be one flight, just down to however they get to Augusta. You just do it once instead of an extra stop. And that's basically what they're doing, is eliminating an extra stop.
The recruiting landscape continues. It's kind of quiet right now because I don't expect any commitments or anything until after Peach Jam, now after the Adidas Gauntlet, after that stuff. The guys that are not committed either want to be seen by other people or want to show their wares, I guess, to others.
Yeah, I mean, that's one way to look at it for sure. There still is a supply and demand element to this, where if, once the offer goes out to somebody else, especially in your position, then it tends to be first come, first serve, and you do lose a sense of control at that point. Not just a sense of control, but you lose control, you lose autonomy on that offer. And I'm assuming that these schools that are making the offers are making it to players that they are willing to take a commitment from. Sometimes it's not always the case, but I don't blame kids or families for having a plan. And as part of that plan is to play the process out, which would be play through July, start making visits, or finishing your visits, as some of these guys have started making visits in June. I have no problem with families doing that. Sometimes they take criticism. They're accused of wanting attention, et cetera, so forth. Well, and that's fine. It's their life. They're the ones living it. But the flip side of that is that schools that offer, that are offering multiple scholarships out at each position, they are definitely playing one kid against the other, and it's just good old school economics. It's supply side really is what it is, and the schools control that part of it.
I know that, and just for fun, I can't predict because I just keep saying, man, I don't want to try to make any predictions right now with Indiana basketball because it's idiotic, but it's almost hard knowing who they have in there from a coaching standpoint, know that the talent that has been brought in, seeing what is going on in the Big Ten, and not really starting to say, damn, they're going to have a shot to be in the top third of this league next year, probably if things go right with what like I said, I'm going to wait until I see them, but I don't want to, come across fanish. And, but man, facts are facts. We don't know about all the other teams. I don't know what Maryland has. I don't know what Ohio State has, but it doesn't look good for Illinois. It doesn't look good for Iowa. They're probably okay. They're not going to be dying, but they've lost a lot. Indiana has gained a lot. So it's going to be a different year in this league. Of course, Michigan's still up there, and Purdue on paper looks great, but Indiana should be able to undoubtedly compete in this league. And they could not compete at the top level last year.
Well, and you put it, the one thing I thought last year is it always seemed like it seemed like a 4 to 6 minute stretch where they really couldn't score. And there were a number of tighter games down the stretch that were plagued by inefficient offense. And then you could tell defensively the lack of depth up front that, with Brunk's injury, it was pretty much putting all the pressure on Trace, Jackson Davis, and Race Thompson to constantly be the guys battling up front. And I think late in games, especially defensively, it really impacted both of those guys. And it was not uncommon to see them, wear down for good reasons. And that is not even remotely to be critical. So there were a lot of instances last year. It seemed like that Indiana was close, but just couldn't get over the hump. And if you change 3 or 4 of those 3 or 4 of those type, we could play the what if game all day. But if you change 3 or 4 of those outcomes, you are looking at a team that's in the top third of the Big Ten. So it's not difficult to think that with an influx of talent and maybe a more balanced roster, that they now become that team. And you just wonder now what the coaching is going to look like and what the system's going to look like and if it's going to actually translate to wins on the court. That's the only thing left is just, Coach Woodson and his staff have checked a lot of boxes in the off season, and the rest of it is just getting them in a gym and starting to play games.
Yeah, yeah, because it's actually it's going to be fun. They have a deep roster that some guys we haven't even seen. Parker Stewart, haven't even seen this guy, and we know that he can play. So there's an unknown, and then you've got the new unknowns that have come in. I think it's going to be a very exciting time, because you're going to have guys that are competing at a high level and guys that can push them to that level. I think it's going to be a fun season at the very least.
Well, the Stewart deal, we know he's good offensively, and I'm trying to check on some numbers here that he had.
Good point.
And what I like about him is his size. I love his size at that position. He looks like he's a strong kid as well. And by size, I mean just height, length, things like that. I mean, his year at UT Martin, he averaged close to 4 assists per game. His turnovers were a little high, but when you watch film on him, the ball's in his hands a lot. What worries me about him is, and you look at his three-point percentage, for example. He shot 34.8% last year from the three-point line. But I guarantee you there's 1 or 2 shots a game where he is just chucking up something at the end of a clock. Now, whether that's a function of the ball sticking with him and him settling for a shot late, or if that's a function of them not having anybody else that's overly reliable, it's hard to say, but I'm going to guess that he's going to be better than a 34, 35% three-point shooter at Indiana. The question with him, and this is where I think his size comes into play at the position, is the defensive end of the floor. His defensive video is not good. I guarantee you that when Miller brought him in, that they knew that and that they addressed it, and they felt like he could be different and he could be better. So I'm hopeful on that. And then where his size comes into play is, I think, with his strength, I think he's got a chance of being a good defender in the Big Ten. He doesn't have to be a great defender, but if he could just guard his position and not give things up, then he'll be an asset, because offensively, hearing really good things out of what's going on down there workout wise, and that's from players, or that's through players. It's not directly from players, but that's players telling guys, other players that I know, how good he has looked offensively. So that's going to be interesting to see how it translates to the Big Ten, and it's going to be, for me, the defensive end of the floor is going to be the question mark with him. So.
Well, yeah, and there's going to be a lot of question mark with the guards, period, because there are 7 guards listed on this lineup. I'm talking about playing guards. Those are not. I didn't even include walk-ons, but you've got a new face in Xavier Johnson. You've what happens to Michael Fennessy. You've got Anthony Leo and Trey Galloway, who are both listed as guards, but Christian Lander.
And Tamar Bates, and
Logan Duncombe. He's a center, not Logan Duncombe. I meant to say Tamar Bates, rather, is what I meant.
Yeah,
to say.
Tamar Bates. Yeah, I mean, and then Jordan Geronimo with what they're going to do with his game, and does he? Because I know the previous regime was going to stretch him out to be more of, at the very least, extremely skilled 4. They did not have any issues with him when he got in catch and shoot situations from the 3-point line, especially from the corner, where he was able to maybe find a little bit more room away from his defender who's helping. I think a lot of people are penciling Xavier Johnson as the starting point guard, and I think there's some give and take on who the starting 2 might be, if it matters who starts versus who plays a lot and who finishes games. But obviously, a lot of good things being said about Tamar Bates. And then it would be nice if they could have some size at the 3 and not just be 3 small guards. But Stewart's size lets them perhaps be a little bit more flexible with him. And then obviously Miller Kopp comes in at 6'7", 6'8", and who's a very good shooter and probably would have been the best shooter on the team last year had he been playing for Indiana.
Yeah, I think that they're going to probably go more with a 2-guard lineup. If you've got Miller Kopp in there, you've got that prototype typical wing guy. And then if you've got Trace Jackson Davis or Durr or Race Thompson, I mean, there's just there's a lot of different options, a lot of different ways to attack this season, where last year there wasn't. They can just shooting, attacking from the wing with slashing, rebounding. They just have a completely different attack this year.
Well, and I look at Race Thompson as a guy I liked his shot mechanics last year. I know at the end of it, he just shot 30% from the 3-point line. It was definitely a low volume. It's not something you're going to wrap your offense around, but it is something that becomes secondary options off ball screen action as he's screening and stepping out. If he's involved in any dribble handoff action, which would be a similar play to a ball screen action where you're taking a step out and spacing the floor versus just being a big guy that rim runs after that type of exchange. But his ability to maybe stretch the floor and at least be a threat will obviously open things up for Trace, because now they can't just leave one guy. They can't just leave him and double down with a second big or clog the paint with a second big. And Trace's ability to use his right hand this year that's going to be something to monitor, because he's still going to, as good as he was last year, as improved as he was, there's still a lot of points left on the board because he always had to get back to his left hand. And that aspect has to change, not just for Indiana's success, but for his success beyond and his opportunities beyond Indiana.
How hard is it going to be for someone that, as good as he is and as good as he has been, and he's used to dominating, not last year, of course, but coming up before he didn't have to do any of that. And unfortunately, no one forced him to, which is shocking. That is, he has a father that played in the NBA. His stepdad has been so good with him. I don't know how he got this far like that, but how hard is it going to be to add that?
Dale couldn't shoot. Dale couldn't shoot.
Well, but I'm just surprised someone hasn't forced Trace Jackson. I'm just saying, coaches, dude, you've got to go with it. Like, we need you, somebody along the way.
So some of it's confidence. There's no question. It's funny because I coached the other side of that. The Davis situation. I coached Rick Smits's son, and it was Rick's. I remember Rick's often criticized for his inability to, for his low rebound numbers, and you think, well, crap. As skilled as Rick was, he was away from the basket quite a bit because he was the one stretching the floor out for the Pacers. Even if it was maybe not the 3-point line back then, but it was definitely from the elbow and high post and mid range. And those two guys, along with Antonio Davis, shared the rebounding responsibilities, and there were rarely lineups where two of them weren't on the floor. I can't think of too many times where they didn't have two of those three guys on the floor. So it's funny that so now here's Trace, and the game has changed so much between the time when Dale played and the time when Trace played. You've almost expect everybody at that level to be able to shoot the ball extremely well. There would have been a time where you wouldn't have expected Trace to be able to do that, but the right hand thing, the unwillingness, I think what it's become is it's gone from inability to go right to unwillingness to go right between his freshman and sophomore years. Those seems to be the change in vocabulary when you get a chance to talk to people down there that were really close to the program or even in the program. And it's not like Trace, because Trace, I know who he works out with. I know who works him out, at least a lot of the time. He has the ability to do that. The question is he going to be willing to do it in games and just get over that hump? And sometimes it's just, it's a fear of failure. You want to go up. You want to make sure you don't look bad doing something. And I don't, he's as good as he is at finishing with his left hand. I think just 2 or 3 times a game, if he would go to his right, it would make things a lot easier for him.
Yeah, because if I'm defending him, I'm just waiting for him to come that way.
Absolutely.
Let's take a quick break. We'll be back with more right after this.
We'll be right back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington.
Hey, Hoosier fans, whether you're looking Man, I guess I'm gonna have to change my router, Johnny boy.
Yeah, you've been having that fuzzy issue ever since that happened with the power outage.
Oh, the video buffering.
Yeah, I mean his audio sounds fine, thankfully.
Yeah,
but
I noticed the video.
I've got when we lost power during that storm 2 weeks ago, it blew my router out, which was a good router, and I put another one on. It seemed to be working fine, but that's all right. I've got a better one I'll put on. I was hoping not to open it until I moved. I have to move this month.
You might want to. Are you testing your connection? Like through your provider?
Yeah, they came out and did all that. It's just it's the router. It's just not as good a router.
Okay.
We'll have about 9 minutes for this last segment when we come back.
What do you have coming up? Anything, Jim?
No, we played this weekend. I haven't looked at what Indiana teams. I might sneak over and watch Joey Hart play, and Orm over at the other facility. I'm not even sure if there's any other Indiana teams in the event we're in. Let me double check. I know it's loaded. No, there's no other Indiana programs. Sorry for. I guess we're off the air, so
we're not on the air. You're good.
There are
Rick Bozich Friday.
Okay. Oh, also that reminds me. Paul said he can come on Thursday because he
Who's
said
Paul?
Indiana's expecting another commit for football between
point.
now and then.
All right, mark it down.
So Paul Thursday and Bozich for Friday.
Yeah.
and if Alec has somebody he wants me to dip in and see, I mean, I'm going to have some time in between games a little bit of time to kill. Our hotel is 30 minutes away from where we play. I may not always be all that anxious to run back to the hotel. So
in Atlanta?
Yeah.
Talking about?
Yeah.
All right, I'm going to bring us back.
And Broad Ripple has wings, tender steaks, and seafood. Sam's Ale House in Carmel and on 86th Street in Indy have a long list of craft beers and all of the right foods to go with. Plan a day on the links at Eagle Point in Bloomington, then stay for dinner at Sam's Clubhouse. Sam's Restaurants, professionals in the art of food and drink. This segment is brought to you by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Now back to the Golf Club at Eagle Point Studios for more Indiana Sports Beat Radio with Jim Coyle, presented by Andy Moore Honda of Bloomington. Here's Jim Coyle.
Welcome back. This Tuesday, post 4th of July Blues. The NBA Finals, not as much. I said this earlier. Man, they were the atmosphere, the energy, the electricity. 2 series ago was just awesome. It was great. It was fun. The games were awesome. And man, during the semis, it seemed like it really kind of the air got let out, some injuries, and now you've got Giannis is doubtful. Suns are a solid favorite. Not looking as fun as it did.
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see the extent to which Giannis is actually injured. I know there's no structural damage. They're worried now that the question will be is if he plays, did it create some weaknesses that will, not unlike what Durant maybe went through a couple years ago with his Achilles, where they were saying, yeah, he's good enough to play, but really he wasn't. I think they're going to be awfully careful with Giannis, even more so because of that. And I think the other issue is compensation too. If he's out there and he's limping around or he's not, his gait changes, especially as he's running. If his gait changes, then he's got a chance to create injuries in other parts of his body, especially his hips and his knees and his ankles. So I think they'll be careful with it. I would definitely think he's not going to play in game 1, and then where it goes from there. But I listen to a lot of NBA podcasts, so where it goes from there is up to Milwaukee, and even if they just go game to game and act like he's questionable, just to play around with Phoenix and make them prepare for everything. You always want to make your opponent to prepare for as much as possible. So I don't think they're ever going to come out and say Giannis is not going to play in the series. I think they'll make it game by game.
I mentioned earlier, 3-star cornerback James Mons committed to Indiana yesterday for football. So that is another big get for Tom Allen out of that football or the Florida pipeline. Man, those athletes, they make a huge difference. Indiana has more Florida recruits than any Big Ten team, which is kind of funny. It's hard. Yeah, it's hard to believe, but that's the truth.
I don't. Obviously, I cheer for Indiana football. I don't get into the recruiting side of it all that much, but it's good when you can tap into a region that is strong. I mean, I'm just going to state the obvious there, but what's odd is that are they getting the best skills players out of Indiana? And is that mattering?
Well, it's not mattering, but to me, that's the key to improved recruiting. They've never had a 5-star yet. You go back and look at their recruiting hierarchy, and it started to increase once they got their very first 5-star in 2011. Then they kept getting them, and their recruiting improved. Their overall, they've not gotten that 5-star yet. They need to get that Indiana 5-star, the guy that they can keep at home, I think, and then others will eventually come. But they're developing guys. They're developing 3-stars into All-Americans right now. An exact example of that is Tywan Mullen, a DB from Florida who came here as, I think, a 3-star maybe. I can't remember, but now he's an All-American. I thought this would be the class that mattered. I don't know that this class is big enough yet, but they need to win a bowl game. But it's starting definitely with the transfers. It's definitely, I see it has made a difference because the transfers they got coming in from the USC running back was a previous 5-star recruit. All those guys were high end. So the younger guys are still being swayed, I think, some by the names of the schools.
Yeah, and I go back to, I know this predates Coach Allen being on being the head coach of the football team, but a guy like Brandon Peters is a kid that played basketball in our program, and getting Indiana to the point at the skills position, especially where they're more interested in going to Indiana and getting not just getting playing time, but getting quality playing time at a really good program versus going to a Michigan and being backup for 3 years, 4 years, in some cases, if you count a redshirt year. And it's those are the guys that you would think that Indiana could convert, Purdue too, for that matter. Although they've obviously been able to snag some guys at the wide receiver, running back position out of the state, especially a couple of the guys they've had out of Warren Central. But it'd be nice to see somebody that has that type of talent go to an Indiana and get 3 years as a starter to really develop and prove, and show other recruits what type of development program, what type of developing they do with their skills players, because these kids go to these really big schools, these really traditionally big, successful programs, and sit and transfer, or transfer, and no one ever hears from them again. So those are the kids I'm talking about. But then that's just, I just don't follow it that much as far as the recruiting side of it. I certainly sit and watch them and hope they win. But that's about it.
Another decision looming tomorrow for Indiana football. As Omar Cooper Jr. is set to announce his selections. He's a wide receiver from Indianapolis, of course. Lawrence North High School, down to Indiana and West Virginia.
Coming off an injury and missed the entire basketball season. Super, super athletic. And if he plays football with any remoteness of the motor that he plays basketball, then he's got a chance to be good. He plays so hard on the basketball floor, and they missed him this year just from a sheer secondary playmaking type situation, offensive rebounds, deflections, being able to guard bigger guys, and just being able to be a presence with his athleticism and his strength, but super, super athletic kid. Holy cow. Uh-oh, did he freeze, John?
I think we may have lost Jim.
I'm gonna riff. You want me to play it for 2 minutes?
Well, good news is that it's about time to wrap things up.
We're about done.
Anyway.
Yeah, good.
So
all right,
we're about 45 seconds left. So
45
thanks,
seconds.
Jim, for joining us.
No
today.
problem.
Also, want to give a thanks to Mike DeCourcy and Chronic Hoosier as usual for joining us here on this Tuesday. And there goes Jim leaving the stream. But we're gonna go ahead and wrap things up. Thanks for listening, and for myself and Jim Coyle, we will see you on the radio.